Welcome to Galactic Terrors, an online reading series sponsored by the HWA's New York chapter. I'm Jim Chambers, and with me tonight is Carol Geisander. Carol, good to see
Hi,
you.
everybody. Hi, everyone.
Thank you to everyone who's joining us tonight. We have a great lineup of readers, which we'll get to in just a minute. But as you can see behind me, there are some pumpkins, and Carol is wearing the appropriate seasonal colors for Halloween.
Yeah, this is the same vest I've worn every year since my kids were really little, and I get to wear it once, maybe twice a year. So I thought, this is October. Let's get this going. Let's get this going.
That's it. So it's, you've got an excuse to celebrate Halloween again.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Kids are a great reason to do Halloween up big, but I think horror writers get a special kick out of the season, and I know a lot of us are busy doing readings and appearances and having publications come out and things like that. And the HWA over on the main website, horror.org, is running a month-long special blog event on the Dark Whispers blog called Halloween Haunts. And every day it's one or more posts about Halloween or horror writing or Halloween and horror writing from an HWA member. And they've got some fantastic posts going over there. I suggest you drop by and check that out when you get a chance, if you definitely want to get into the seasonal mood or the atmosphere.
Mm-hmm. I just read one on there by Megan Curry-Moran, who's one of our New York members, and she was talking about getting chased as a kid on Halloween, and I think there's a lot of us who can maybe sympathize with that. Or, boy, it took me right back to hiding behind a tree and all sorts of stuff. It was very cool. Very cool.
Was she being chased by people or things?
Well, I'm going to leave you to find that out yourself, because it may had my heart pounding.
Okay. Yes, I'll definitely check that out. Yeah, this year I for many years I curated a Halloween Haunts series, and we got some fabulous posts from authors from the HWA, just great memories of Halloween, great Halloween traditions, really insightful commentaries about horror writing and all sorts of stuff. And I passed the torch on for that a while back, and this year Kevin Wetmore is doing it, and from what I've seen, he's doing a spectacular job with it. So I'm definitely going to check out Megan Post.
Oh yeah, it was very cool. I remember when I was a kid, I was in 3rd grade. We just moved to a new town. I was out trick-or-treating by myself, except my dad was with me. He was walking behind me with his mug of coffee, and a bunch of little ruffian older boys were like, "Hey, little girl, blah, blah, blah." My dad comes up behind me. He was 6'3", and he's like, "I don't think so, boys." You never saw kids run so fast. It was great.
Very cool. Well, the first blog post I wrote for Halloween Haunts was about the time I found a dead body on Halloween. So I'll leave that story for another day. But but just to say a little bit before we get started in earnest about the HWA, I'm sure any of the people joining us tonight are familiar with the Horror Writers Association, what it does. For those of you who may not be, the HWA is an international author support and networking group. And it offers scholarships, mentorship programs, market resources, networking opportunities. We administer Bram Stoker Awards each year. We run StokerCon each year, which is a horror writing convention, which has become really, a great convention to go to. I think we're heading into our 6th year in 2021, when it will hopefully take place in Denver, Colorado. And we just, a big part of StokerCon is Horror University. And Horror University is a series of workshops that take place at StokerCon, taught by people like Jonathan Mayberry, Linda Addison, John Skip, and Tim Wagner, and many others. And we have just announced today that we are launching Horror University online. And our first 4 online workshop will take place later this month through November. And we'll be feature instructors Jonathan Mayberry, Linda Addison, Lisa Morton, and Tim Wagner. So you can check out more about that. Those are open to members and non-members, but they're a great new resource that we've been working on for quite a while. So I just want to get a plug in there for this.
And I just want to say how lucky we were to get some of our readers in here. We have Linda Addison with us tonight, and we had Lisa Morton, the past president of HWA, read at our last one, our pilot episode. So, there's so many great people and such great resources. That's one of the niftiest things that I have found about HWA. Jim will probably talk about those in just a second, but the other thing is the people. You know, I went to my first StokerCon 2 Stokers ago, and that's where I met Linda. And, you know, she was warm, friendly, welcoming, and a lot of people from all over the country and all over the world come together, and we all share something, a love of horror, writing horror.
Yeah, to say around the world is really accurate. We have chapters in many countries. We have a big chapter in Italy. We have a chapter in Dublin. We have a very big chapter in the UK. We recently, just in the last month, added a brand new chapter in India. And so we really are getting all over the place and expanding, getting a lot of interest from around the world, which is fantastic, and really trying to, you know, keep up the outreach to writers everywhere and horror readers everywhere. So it is a terrific organization. I agree that people are fantastic. I've taken Linda's poetry workshop, so I think that's the one she's doing in October. I highly recommend it.
Me too. I really recommend it. She got me to read my poetry in front of people. I mean, wow.
Yeah. That's not always easy to do. So, but just to talk a little bit about our lineup tonight, we have 4 readers: Robert P. Ottone, April Gray. I'll be reading tonight, whether you guys like it or not, and Linda Addison will be reading with us tonight. So it's going to be a fantastic session. Again, we thank you all for coming and for signing on and joining us tonight. I think we'll get the readings in just a minute. And is there anything else we should talk about, Carol?
Oh, well, you know, one thing I just want to mention briefly now, and we'll bring it up again later, our events are always on the second Thursday of the month. So you can count on that, 8 o'clock New York time, Eastern Standard Time. And we also have a newsletter that we've put up here and there, and we will plop in the chat in a little bit. You can sign up for the newsletter. We will not spam you. We'll just give you information about what's coming up and who's reading, and it's nice to have a reminder. So, yeah, and thank you, Jim, for putting that up. This is a short name for what it is. Otherwise, it would be way too much to do. We'll put it in the chat as well, so you can something you can copy and click.
Yes, we'll get that into the chat, and the URL will be a little easier to link to or to copy and paste. Yeah, we're not yet at the level of having links in these banners, unfortunately, but one day soon, we hope. The technology keeps improving. All right, so I think, you know, let's get to what people joined us for, and we'll start off with the readings. Our first reader tonight will be Robert Ottone. And let me just pull up Robert's bio, and I'll give Robert a little introduction. I think many of the people on tonight probably know Robert from the local chapter of the HWA. Robert P. Ottone is an author, teacher, and cigar enthusiast from East Islip. He delights in the creepy. He can be found online at www.spookyhousepress.com or on Instagram at Robert Ottone. His collections, Her Infernal Name and Other Nightmares, and People, a horror anthology about love, loss, life, and things that go bump in the night, are available now wherever books are sold. So let's welcome Robert Ottone.
The Nebulous They. Officer Blatty wasn't entirely sure what to make of Kevin Moore. The man had been arrested earlier that day at a Times Square movie theater, matching the profile put together by the head peepers at Quantico. Blatty had been a good student, and he stayed on top of modern FBI profiling techniques, something some of the older guys in the NYPD thought was a waste of time. Good old detective work. That's the key here, many of his older compatriots said when they caught him studying books by famous profilers like John Douglas or Robert Ressler. Blatty was just checking in with the ticket seller at the theater, a girl named Catherine, with whom he often stopped to chat with while on patrol. It was during one of his usual nervous flirtations that the ticket girl and the officer spotted Moore at the candy counter. Blatty immediately remembered the well-circulated sketch provided by an individual who died at the hospital, the most recent victim of what the NYPD and FBI were internally calling the Butcher of Manhattan. News outlets hadn't yet learned about Moore or his activities, so the hunt was still quiet, with NYPD officers and FBI personnel executing the dragnet with relative secrecy. The killer had been responsible for at least a dozen deaths over the past 4 months, all with the same modus operandi, removing one of the victim's kidneys, and then carving a series of strange symbols and apparent nonsense into their skin. It had been a miracle that the latest victim, Anna, survived long enough to give a description and account of what had happened to her. Anna had been working in a small market just off Times Square, and before she passed away at the hospital, she told investigators that she had seen the killer multiple times in the area, and that he possibly even lived nearby. Blatty excused himself from his conversation with Catherine and made his way over to the candy counter. Moore noted his arrival with a smile and nod, and then proceeded to order a Dr. Pepper, along with some red vines. That should have been enough right there, ordering red vines like a common lunatic, Blatty would later joke with his co-workers at the precinct, recalling his encounter with Butcher of Manhattan. When Blatty asked Moore what movie he was seeing, Moore just smiled. There was a tiny bit of red on his neck and a tiny scratch on his cheek, and the officer immediately became more suspicious. "Sir, could you come with me?" Blatty asked. They stepped out of line, and Moore took a sip from his Dr. Pepper. He stared at the young officer, his eyes glassy and wide, as though he were in another place. "Do you hear it? That music?" Blatty listened, his hand moving slowly and eventually resting on his sidearm. "I don't hear anything, sir. What's your name?" "You already know my name, Officer Blatty." Unnerved at hearing his own name repeated back to him, Blatty was about to ask how he knew it, but then remembered it was on his badge. "Sir, do you have any identification on you?" Moore shrugged. "It was supposed to be a beautiful movie, too. One of those life-affirming charmers, you know?" "Sure, pal. Do me a favor. Take a seat right there." Blatty turned to Catherine and nodded, and she called the police. Blatty used the radio on his shoulder to call on the situation. "Is that blood?" "Is what blood?" "On your collar, on your shirt. That looks like blood." "Doesn't everything look like blood, Officer Blatty?" Blatty just stared at Moore. "Sir, do you have any identification on you?" "What is identification, after all? What if I was switched at birth and my identification said one thing when in fact I was another? Would identification matter then?" "That is an excellent question, sir," Blatty said, nodding. "Let's just wait and see, okay?" Moore smiled, nodded, and continued to drink his soda. The bag of red vines sat beside him on the bench. Catherine walked over and told Blatty that the police were on their way, and Moore stared at her. "Catherine, you're very tricky, working with Officer Blatty like that. You'll do well once they arrive." Soon after, Moore was being loaded into a police van that would take him to the precinct. Blatty was debriefed by his commanding officers, along with the FBI agents who had been sent in to provide guidance and catch the killer. The agents asked if Moore said anything strange to him, and Blatty recounted the conversation in the lobby of the theater. Nobody seemed bothered by the smell of rot coming off Moore. What did bother everyone was that the Butcher of Manhattan refused to speak to anyone. He was asked a battery of questions and shown pictures, but indicated zero response to anything. When the FBI agents decided to get a little physical with him, even then he didn't utter a peep. Eventually, Moore made one statement: "I will only speak to Officer Blatty." The agents were annoyed, and after 2 more hours of putting the boots to their prime suspect, did they relent to Moore's demands. His sergeant didn't want him going into the room with the Butcher of Manhattan, since he certainly wasn't the most experienced cop, but there wasn't much choice. The young policeman had his vest and uniform on, and he was permitted by both Moore and the agents to enter with his sidearm. When Blatty entered the interrogation room, the stench hung in the air like dishes that had been sitting in the sink entirely too long. Blatty remembered his first murder, down in Harlem, dishes piled high, a wife with a steak knife buried in her throat. Blood, ancient crusty dishes, and stagnant water. He would never forget it. Blatty stifled a gag and sat down opposite Moore. "Why haven't you asked her out yet?" Moore asked as Blatty sat down. "What? Who?" "The girl at the movie house, Catherine. Don't play coy." "Just haven't worked up the nerve, I guess," Blatty admitted. "Do you know why you're here?" The FBI had told Blatty not to let the conversation get personal, and yet here they were, getting personal with the first question. "You shouldn't wait, you know. A girl like that, she's ripe, and men know it," Moore said, smiling. Blatty noticed that the so-called butcher was the type of man who could easily be passed on the streets of New York City and not be noticed. He's unremarkable in every way. Why do you think you're here, Mr. Moore? Because I killed a bunch of people, and that little Puerto Rican girl lived long enough to give you some information about what I look like, and your police department was somehow smart enough to keep it a secret. Anna, right? That was her name? Blatty stared at Moore. In all the videos he saw and information he read about suspects accused of murder, none had ever outlined their situation so succinctly. Her name was Anna. That's correct. Moore nodded. When I removed her kidney, she pissed herself. Did you know that? I bet you did. The human body is deliciously strange. All sorts of crazy shit happens to it when you start applying certain pressures. Removing a kidney, for example, results in the involuntary loss of urine. How wonderful! Why do it? What do you get out of it? Out of what? Exploring the human body with knives, scissors, and X-Acto blades? What a dumb question. Why not ask me what I don't get out of it? Moore said, laughing. Fair enough. Why the kidneys, though? Why not take something a little more symbolic, like the heart or the eyes or something? Now, that's a good question, Officer Blatty, Moore said, smiling. The kidneys are what they eat. Blatty stared at Moore. They? He leaned back in his chair and looked toward the two-way mirror in the observation room of the station, where he knew the FBI agents were hanging on every word. Who are they? It would be so much easier to show you who they are, but... Moore jingled his handcuffs. They're everywhere. At all times. They see things. They know things. They're us, but they're also them. You have to understand that what you just said doesn't make a lot of sense, Mr. Moore. To you, maybe. To the agents behind the glass, maybe. But to some, it makes perfect sense. Blatty stood up and walked to the wall. He crossed his arms and leaned against it, thinking, Tell me about them. Why do they make sense to you? Well, because I've seen them, Officer Blatty. They came to me, asked me to get them what they needed, Moore explained, his matter-of-fact tone unsettling to Blatty. Why couldn't they get what they needed on their own? Why ask you? Because I was available to them. I was in the right headspace, that's all, Moore shrugged. Could have been anyone, really. You, even, if you were in that zone, you know? What zone is that? Moore shrugged. I was at work. My secretary informed me that my lunch date with Paul Denton was being called off because Paul couldn't get away from the office. I guess I was annoyed. And that's when they slipped in. That's when they told me about you and our afternoon at the movies. Blatty stared at him. So because your lunch date was canceled, you started killing people and cutting out their kidneys? Moore rolled his eyes. If you're just going to give me the runaround, then just lock me up and let's just wait for them to get here. You're supposed to be cool about this, Officer Blatty, not all boring and running the FBI's playbook page by page. I'm sorry, you're right. Blatty sat back down. The smell was overpowering to the point where his eyes began to sting a bit like chopping onions. Please, continue, Blatty said, rubbing his eyes. You okay? Something in your eye? You stink, Mr. Moore. You smell like... Moore leaned forward. Like they do. I wish you could explain who they are. Oh, they'll be here soon enough. They have what they need now. Anna was the last one, of course. I was going to the movies to celebrate their arrival. There was a low rumble, like the sound of thunder. Blatty looked at the two-way mirror, then at Moore. Did you feel that? When they arrive, it will feel like pins and needles all over your body. Do you feel it? Moore was right. Pins and needles, starting at Blatty's toes and working its way up as though his entire body had fallen asleep. Another sound of thunder. The lights in the interrogation room flickered. What's happening? Moore smiled. They're here. With that, Blatty stood up and walked to the door. When he opened it and stepped into the station, he saw that everyone, including the FBI agents, had gathered at the front doors and windows, looking out into the street and the city. In the distance, hovering over the skyscrapers, was a massive purple cloud pulsating with red lightning. The tremors grew more aggressive, and furniture began to topple over in the station. Everyone seemed paralyzed, watching the cloud grow and slowly engulf the tops of buildings. People on the streets watched too, transfixed by the incredible sight. The officer watched as tendrils slid out of the cloud and began crawling their way down the skyscrapers. He stepped out onto the street, through the crowd of officers at the door of the station, and stared. The glass of the building shattered under the pressure of the slithering nightmare. Concrete, metal, and glass rained from the sky. As Blatty watched the buildings around him become engulfed by the clouds and the thick tendrils, he thought he saw a multitude of eyes in the darkness of the nimbus, blinking furiously, pink, darting around in every direction, but only for a moment. Unable to comprehend what it might have been, he sat down on the sidewalk and listened to the screams of the people around him as the dark purple tentacles swarmed down from the sky. The end.
Thank you, Rob. That was fantastic.
Thank you.
Great story.
Thank you, sir.
Wonderfully read too, and perfect for Halloween season, I think. So you know what? We do have some questions coming up in the comments, so I'm gonna jump right over to those. First, I'm just going to point out one. I think this one got everybody. That line. That was a big hit. So where did that line come from? What was your thinking writing that?
I was thinking about how Hannibal Lecter says something along the lines of in Manhunter that, you ever see blood in the moonlight, it looks quite black. And I think I was thinking about that in Red Dragon. And I just love Hannibal, and I wanted to kind of do my own spin on that.
Cool. Well, it's definitely a memorable line. And I think a question that's on everyone's mind, but Alp is the first one that commented on it. Did you name Officer Blatty as a homage to William Peter Blatty, the author?
Yes. My greatest regret is having his email and phone number for 2 years and never calling or emailing him, and then he passed away.
That was a missed opportunity.
Absolutely.
And that actually, I was wondering too, was the movie connection another homage or Easter egg to William Peter Blatty? Because the whole movie theme was a big part of Legion, his sequel to The Exorcist.
Yeah, I always loved how he always included so many pop culture, movie, and a lot of musical references into his work, and I wanted to pay homage to him in that way as well.
Okay. Terrific. So that story is from, tell us the title of your collection again. Her Infernal Name?
Yes, Her Infernal Name and Other Nightmares.
Okay. And tell us about the collection. Is there a theme to the collection? Does that story represent what's in the collection, or are they sort of an eclectic mix?
It's an eclectic mix. There are two more science fiction leaning stories in there. That is one of them. And I really wanted to play with different fears that I have and sort of exercise those the best I could through short stories and a novella. And that's what Her Infernal Name and Other Nightmares is all about. It's all about fear. Very
cool. And that came out last month, right? Just about 2 weeks ago?
Yeah, September 29th it came out.
Great. So hot off the presses.
Yes, sir.
And since we're heading right on into Halloween, what's your favorite Halloween treat?
Ooh, I'm a weirdo. My sister would think I'm crazy for saying this, but Almond Joy. I love Almond Joy so much.
Good. Do you like the bite-sized ones? They like the fun size?
Oh yeah, I'll take anything. Anybody who has extra Almond Joy, feel free to send them my way. Small ones, the big ones, whatever you got, I'll take them.
Rob will send you his address via email if you have your Almond Joys, and he will exchange books for Almond Joys.
There you go. That works.
How about a favorite Halloween movie? Is there one that you always watch around this time of year?
Yeah, I always like to, obviously Halloween is a big one, but I also try to watch The Exorcist as well. The Exorcist, with it starting on Halloween, she does walk around at Halloween time in Georgetown, and I always get a kick out of that. I always love it. But I also love the Jeff Goldblum version of The Legend of Sleepy Hollow. That's my favorite.
I don't think I've ever seen that one.
Oh, it's a masterpiece. I used to watch it with my dad every year.
Okay. So does he play Ichabod Crane?
Yeah, he plays Ichabod Crane. Dick Butkus plays Brom Bones. And if you remember from the Star Trek, who played Savick, it's not Rebecca from Cheers, it's the other Savick. She's in it as Katrina Van Tassel.
Oh, wow. Okay, I'll have to look that one up. I've never seen that one, and that is a great story, one of my favorites.
Mine too, for sure.
One more question before we go. This is probably not for you directly, Rob, but I just want to share Al's thoughts. What's wrong with almond joy? She too loves the almond joy candy.
I think people don't like coconut. I'm a big coconut guy. I don't know. Anytime you can combine coconut and almonds, I'm all in on that.
And Teal, who is our resident movie expert, gave us the name of the actress, Robin Curtis.
There you go. Thank you, sir. Yes, that's exactly who it is. She plays Katrina Van Tassel, and she's wonderful. She's got those incredible eyes.
Yeah.
So it really adds to Katrina's character a lot.
Fantastic. All right. Rob, thank you so much.
Thank you.
A wonderful reading. We're going to have all of our readers on together at the end of our session to talk about what they have coming up next and where they'll be appearing next. So we'll hear about that from Rob a little bit later. And now I'm going to bring on our next reader, who is April Gray. And April's short stories are collected in The Fairy Cake Bake Shop and in I'll Love You Forever. She has also written the urban fantasy novels Finding Perdita, Chasing the Trickster, and its sequel, St. Nick's Favor. She has edited the anthologies Hell's Highway, Terrifying Tales of Tormented Travels, Hell's Heart, Tales of Love Run Amok, Hell's Bells, Wicked Tunes, Mad Musicians, and Cursed Instruments. I think you all see the theme developing here. Hell's Grannies, Kick-Ass Tales of the Crone, Hell's Kitties and Other Beastly Beasts, and Hell's Garden, Mad, Bad, and Ghostly Gardeners. And I believe we're going to be doing a cover reveal at the end of the program tonight for the next volume in the Hell's Anthology series. April was also a co-editor on the Stoker Award-nominated A New York State of Fright. Let's welcome April Gray.
Hi there. Okay, so I'm going to be reading my story, The Black Loot. Big day tomorrow, traveling all the way to London. Mackenzie Smith tuned his 6-course lute with care, cradling its rounded back on his lap and adjusting the wooden pegs with a gentle hand. It was only a reproduction, honey-colored wood with an intricate cutout on the front, but it sang so sweetly, often bringing tears to Mac's eyes. The one enduring love of his life breathed vitality into him, just as his slightly tremoring fingers gave her a voice. I think you're a reincarnated soul, his sister Bee had told him back in their youth. You're lost in time, and our modern-day conveniences are wasted on you. It was as if she was still in the room, his memory of her words sounding crystal clear. Over the years, she had been the only woman who understood him. Since her death, the previous winter, his life had turned inward drastically. Mac nodded and smiled to himself. She had been a fine woman. He gave the instrument a soft strike of the string. Though he was only an amateur, the sound of its music sent his soul spiraling to the past. He sniffed and with deep sentiment plucked Dowland's Flow My Tears, a ditty from that golden time, the Renaissance. Flow my tears, fall from your springs, exiled forever, let me mourn. Where night's black bird her sad infamy sings, there let me live forlorn. Hark, you shadows that in darkness dwell, learn to contemn light. Happy, happy, they that in hell feel not the world's despite. Giving its golden wood a final caress, he placed the lute in its protective case. I shall miss you, but I'll be visiting another of your sisters in wood, he rapped on the case. Don't be jealous, old girl. He flung open the front door of his Devon cottage, whitewashed and barely larger than a shed, and tasted the salty night air. A full moon painted the landscape with an eerie wash over his tiny front yard and its path leading to an empty road. Stars glimmered at the sides of the sky. The quiet moan of the distant surf licked at him. He closed his eyes, savoring the peace. Mac accepted the presence of the internet and electricity, but had little need of them. After 45 years of curating at a small regional museum, sadly specializing in Roman gold and artifacts rather than his beloved Renaissance, his remaining days were too full of memories. Yet the land here kept him in the moment and from escaping into the past. Oh my. Mac's fingers itched to stroke the wood, gleaming black, made of ebony with a patterned inlay of jet. The lute obviously had been owned by a very rich man. It sat on the table at the back room of Stedman's Antiques and Curios, wooing him, seducing him. His hand strived to caress its bowed back, to pluck its strings, have it sing for him. Even at a distance, the age of the lute declared itself as from the time of Elizabeth I. So, your trip here went well? Laird Stedman dimpled at his friend's impatience. Did you invite me here for torture? Stedman handed the lute to his elderly friend. Sorry, couldn't help but take the piss. Mac caught his breath. 1556, you say? According to the provenance. Unless you differ, I have more respect for your knowledge than... He stopped as the first delectable sounds floated from the strings. Oh, yes. Mac sat with the lute in his arms and began an air. The garden glowed in the moonlight. White blossoms swayed in a slight breeze. The cloying scent of jasmine floated in the air. His hands continued the song which he had begun in a back room at the gallery in London. Though often transported by music in his life, Mac had never before literally been so. Do not stop, or the spell will be broken. Mac feared to look for the source of the soft female voice. His attention instead riveted on the marvel of how strong and limber his hands now felt. Moonlight further revealed that this was not him playing. These hands were young and agile, covered by a thick blanket of blonde hair, different from his own few strands of black on parchment-like skin. No, madam, I would never do that. Mac swallowed, shocked by the rich tenor. He hummed a few bars of the song he was playing, familiarizing his voice. Mac blinked away his astonishment. Where was he? He dared to look up. The woman was fair of face, nay, beautiful, in her white upstanding collar and dark silks. Though the night was brightly lit by the moon, the muted colors peeking through the slashes in her sleeves and the black dress would have been bright green by day. Mac knew his Elizabethan sumptuary laws. Her dress shouted that the affluence that could afford an extravagant lute made of ebony also paid for her outfit and fur-trimmed cape. Her dark hair, so elaborately braided and coiffed, sat under a small, sprightly hat. He sang "Come Again," and then shifted into a series of jigs, beginning with Charlton's jig. The woman kicked up her heels and shouted, "Yes, my lord, yes!" She danced for him. The large feather in her cap bounced and flew about as if it still belonged to a bird. With every step she took, his heart tugged in different directions, to continue playing or to drop the lute and take her into his arms. He hadn't experienced carnal desire in years, but this new body was rearing to have a go. As if reading her mind, "No, you must stop. You must not stop. You will ruin it all." And so he played. Mac expected the sun would soon be brightening the eastern sky, but no, the moon did not move, and the shadows in the night garden, so rich in scent, did not change. Mac would play for her for eternity. He would play although his fingers might bleed or be worn down to the bone. He would never disappoint his lady. She leaned down further into his sight, giving him a kiss on the nose and a glimpse of her white powdered breast and attempting to spill from her bodice. Smith! Damn it all, Smith! Stedman pried the lute from Smith's limp hands. He dialed the emergency services, though he doubted it would do the old man any good. And still Mac played and sang while she danced. He laughed. Was this heaven? He would gladly spend eternity as his lady's courtier. A racket arose from the left. A huge man, red-faced, sporting a grizzled beard and looking as wide and wealthy as King Midas, shambled into the garden from a hidden gate. Here you are, you whore! The woman's eyes rolled in terror, even as she commanded Mac, do not cease to play, I beg you, no matter what you see. The brute's ham-hock of a fist slammed the side of her head, cut off her words. She fell to the gravel, blood spurting from her lips. She kneeled there, dazed. Mac panicked. Continue playing? Or stop and break the spell of a dream gone wrong? Raise his fist to defend his lady? Or obey her wishes? I should have known it was you who tempted her from my bed. A glint of metal shone in the stranger's hand. I shall pay you now, Julius. Even as the blade rammed in Mac's chest, he caressed the lute, plucked its mournful strings as white agony pierced his heart. My lady, I play, always. Stedman's hands shook as he set the alarm on the gallery shop. Too long a day of it, his dear friend gone. The medics tried, but gave up too soon, it felt, and Smith's body removed on a stretcher covered by a sheet. Stedman's partner waited for him at the corner pub. They would toast Smith and his love of music. I know I'll drink too much. He shook his head, but bugger all. Was the excitement too much for him? That damned lute. As if in response to his thoughts, a sound wafted from the back room. Stedman's palms went moist as his mouth ran dry. The lute in its case. How could it play? And what? Stedman tore out of the gallery, even as the words of Greensleeves, sung in a strong tenor, filled his ears. Alas, my love, you do me wrong, to cast me off discourteously, and I have loved you, oh, so long, delighting in your company. Greensleeves was my delight, Greensleeves, my heart of gold, Greensleeves was my heart of joy, and who but my lady, Greensleeves. Thank you.
Oh, April, that was beautiful.
Thank you.
I have to say, you were one of the first people that I met when I came into HWA New York, and I've loved hearing your readings in the summer garden and things like that, and it's delightful to be able to hear you now.
Thank you for having me.
Very moving story. What are your thoughts? I mean, the power of music has such a strong grasp over so many of us, but yet there was something more here. What sparked your interest in writing this story?
Well, my son, when he was 17, went away to lute camp with his lute instructor, and this was out in Ohio. And the instructor insisted pretty much that he have a chaperone, that I go with my son. So I was there on a campus in, was it Western Reserve or something? Mm-hmm. And there were all these lutenists everywhere. all playing Renaissance music, you know, in the churches, you know, having breakfast with them, all the rest of it. And the idea of a haunted lute just came to me. A lute that cursed, you could say, but I prefer haunted. That I'd like to believe that Mac is living a very happy afterlife in spite of the tragedy that obviously had undergone the lady.
Yeah, before that. And that was one of my questions. Is this a happy ending or a sad ending? You know,
I like to keep it open so the person can choose. No. To Stedman is a tragedy.
Mhm.
You know, the lute is down. It took his friend from him.
Yeah.
But Mac, there was very few things holding him on to the current age. And he got to be the one place he always wanted to be, in the Renaissance, playing his lute.
You got me thinking Greensleeves now in my heart. Yeah. Cool.
Yeah, the two songs I chose, they just seem to meld together.
Now, I know some of the other things that you've written are urban fantasy. What appeals to you about that kind of genre? What do you like about your urban fantasy, like your Perdita novel and such?
Well, you know, I've never really been into, I shouldn't lie. I like urban fantasy because it's gritty and it deals with myth and gods and all the stuff I loved as a kid, you know. So the idea that somehow those stories of our childhood actually live in this world with us, that we can somehow turn a corner and walk into a fairy tale. Just, I love the idea. And I also love the fact that it's not high fantasy, that it's the tension between our own mundane life and something that's just beyond our touch.
That's cool. And I like the idea that there can be so many layers of what's in the society, and the majority of people are going about their everyday world, and some people get to see through their veil, you know, and see that extra layer that's put down on top. So I think that's very cool. You know, you've done creative things with that. But the other really creative thing that I love of yours the most is all of the Hell's Granny stories, you know, all the different anthologies. We'll talk about the upcoming one at the end a little bit. But, you know, what made you start doing a series of these? You know, how does that help as a writer, or does it appeal to your interest, or what's the scoop?
I did work for Hearst magazines way back in my 20s. So I've always liked the idea of being able to put together stuff. That kind of excites me. I didn't want to just write. I also liked editing. When I was at Ammunition Books, I really liked editing. And back when I was doing theater, I liked performance, but I preferred directing. So it's sort of a continual line of, I like to perform, but I also enjoy working with artists and seeing what we can develop.
I think it's really cool when you can work on both sides of the screen, basically, or the keyboard, because you know I learned a lot from editing anthologies that I didn't know when I was writing. So I'm quite sure that your past history in publishing is really a difference. Well, thank you very much for coming and sharing this story again. I love hearing it. It's really neat. So thank you. We'll see you again a little bit at the end. And what I'm going to do now is introduce our next reader, James Chambers. The award-winning author of horror, crime, fantasy, and science fiction, James Chambers received the Bram Stoker Award for the graphic novel Kolchak the Night Stalker, The Forgotten Lore of Edgar Allan Poe, and is a 3-time Bram Stoker Award nominee. He's the author of the collections On the Night Border, described by Booklist as a haunting exploration of the space where the real world and nightmares collide, as well as the Corpse Fauna novella series and the dark urban fantasy novella 3 Chords of Chaos. Publishers Weekly gave his Lovecraftian collection The Engines of Sacrifice a starred review and called it chillingly evocative. His website is www.jameschambers.online. Jim?
Thank you for joining us tonight. I'm going to read an excerpt from a story in On the Night Border called Living/Dead. Geez, Phil, I'm over here dying and you're rubbing it in you've got a girlfriend to lie to about stuff, Gustav said, frowning. I'm not rubbing in anything and you're not dying. You twisted my arm to come with you. The least you can do is cover for me with Lana. Tell her we caught the Tarantino revival at the AMC if she asks. She finds out I went to Everlasting Love speed dating at Mercer's pub, even for your benefit, and I'll be sleeping on the couch for a month if she doesn't throw me out. She'll forgive you though, right? Because she still loves you, doesn't she? That's not the point. What's the point then? That at least you've got someone to lose? Gustav's voice rose an octave in pseudo-near hysteria, a trait that amused me, and apparently only me, although it had made me laugh since we first met as college roommates. All I have is an empty apartment waiting for me at home. I don't even have a cat or plants. My phone only rings when my mother calls, and I might die any day, alone, with no one to raise me from the dead. Chill, drama queen. I'm doing you a favor tonight. Don't make me regret it. Gustav sighed. Fine. Can I say we went to see Star Wars 24? No, you cannot. Lana knows I hate those movies. Say what I told you to say and drop this death's door crap. You tell the women in Mercer's you're dying. They're not going to check the little box next to your name on their romance bingo cards. Gustav stopped walking. Phil, you're my best friend. Some concern would be appreciated. Some concern would be appropriate if you were actually sick or dying. What exactly is it you think is wrong with you this time anyway? I'm not sure. I get aches and pains, chills, shakes, headaches, stomach cramps, flashes of light before my eyes. It might be a brain tumor or a blood disease, maybe a nervous system disorder. I've ruled out malaria and trypanosomiasis, but the doctors have to run more tests, an MRI, maybe a CT scan. How many MRIs have you had this year? I lost count. You know, I've never seen you truly sick a day in your life, not even a sniffle. You're one of the healthiest people I know. How about I go with you to your next appointment and order your doctor to stop feeding your hypochondria because you need to drop this nonsense and get on with your life. The only reason I'm here with you tonight is because if you meet someone, maybe you'll regain your senses and start living again instead of obsessing over dying. Easy for you to say. You have Lana. Well, you should have married Carrie the second she said yes instead of nitpicking and obsessing over everything and driving her crazy. She ignores my emails now, won't even take my calls. Would you if you were her? I guess not, but what if deep down she still loves me? That might be enough to reanimate me, right? You are not dying. I slapped Gustav on the back. You're in perfect health. Look both ways before you cross the street. Don't play with guns. Avoid skydiving. And you've got all the time you need to find the love of your life. We rounded a corner, almost colliding with a living dead couple hurrying in the opposite direction. An olive-skinned brunette in her 30s and a man who looked a couple of years gone, his flesh not yet decayed to the leathery wrinkles that eventually came to all the loved dead. They rushed past us as fast as the man's stiff joints allowed, glancing back at a mob of protesters down the block, across the street from Mercer's pub. More than 24 women and men marched in a circle, some waving poster board signs that read, "Love life, not death. Just say no to necrophilia," and "Stop molesting the dead." All of them wore green and red t-shirts printed with the familiar sealed coffin logo of the Society for the Preservation of Natural Death, SPOND, the old school burying brigade, or, as I refer to them, blockheads. The people so full of fear and hate needed to worry about reanimating against their wishes made no sense. I mean, who loved these fools? Maybe it's true there's someone for everyone, but it's hard to imagine. This group wore crimson baseball caps and armbands, tagging them as corpse burners who wanted to deny all rights to the living dead, the kind of jerks who firebombed reawakening centers and date-night funeral parties. At the opposite end of the block, two living dead couples, gray-haired ladies with their long-dead husbands, decked out in suits and dresses for a night on the town, turned the corner, halted when they saw the protest, then rushed back the way they'd come. One of the protesters hurled a rock in their direction, then rushed them, giving up the chase after a few steps and rejoining the protest. Gustav eyed the protesters. Maybe if we hurry, we can still catch that Tarantino revival. What? No, don't let these ignorant morons rob you of a chance for true love. They're all bark and no bite. Stare them down and move on. I don't know if I'm up to it. Between doctor's appointments and tests and Caitlin getting on my case every day, I'm redlining this week. Caitlin's still ripping into you? She kept me till 11, 4 nights this week to run through our Western African malaria stats again and triple check Guatemalan DTP vaccination field reports and found not a single error. Then she reminded me I need to treat working for the World Health Organization like an honor, not a job. She's fishing for an excuse to get rid of me, I'm sure of it. If she axes me, I'll be unloved and unemployed. Let's just go to the movies. I can't face the rejection. No. Don't think about striking out. Think about how good you'll feel when one of the ladies wants you to ask her out on a date. Focus on that. Relax. You can do this. Gripping Gustav's shoulder, I guided him across the street toward Mercer's, giving him no chance to drag his feet. I kept us moving to hide how nervous the Sponda scum made me. So jittery, I jumped back 2 steps when a woman in a Sponda shirt popped out from an alley, blocked our path, and shoved photocopied pamphlets at us. She looked about 25, with chestnut hair pulled back in a bushy ponytail. Her oversized t-shirt hung down over a pair of jeans. Life is for the living. Let the dead die. Don't you think it's selfish to love the dead? We're born mortal. We should die mortal. Love shouldn't conquer death. Stay away from this den of iniquity. Gustav stared at the woman, wide-eyed and pale. It's only a pub, I said. Try it sometime. You might like it. I'll even spot you around. Don't be fooled. The people in there only want to prolong their earthly existence, but that's not what love is for. We all must meet our Maker one day. Nothing should come between us and ultimate grace. She pushed her pamphlets, printed with the headline, "The Dead Must Die," at our hands. We refused them. Gustav looked rattled, so I steered him around her. There's nothing more natural than love enlivening people, I said. No, it's the devil's work, she said. Gustav glanced back at her, frowning, growing paler. Why do these people want everyone to die when they die? Why do they want me to die? They're all healthy, that's why. They're not dying like me, he said. You're not dying either, you raging hypochondriac. Gustav stumbled and clutched his chest. He panted for breath, emitted a gacking noise, and sweated bullets. His eyes bulged, and he shuddered. I yawned and shook my head. Deep breaths, amigo, in and out, let it go. He trembled and coughed some more while mopping his brow with a handkerchief from his pocket. The bondwoman watched him, shameless, her pamphlets fluttering in her hand. I gave her a "see what you did" glare that sent her scurrying. Don't worry about these blockheads. Bullying people and poking holes in other people's happiness gives them a false sense of superiority. It's freaking pathological. Yes, you're right. Of course, you're right. Gustav tucked his handkerchief away. Before he could voice any further doubts, I opened the door of Mercer's and shoved him inside. The voices of the protesters faded as the door closed. Air conditioning blasted us. The aromas of polished wood and beer filled my nostrils. Men and women furred the bar like bristles on a hairbrush, anxious, avoiding each other's eyes. Some sipped frothy pints, others Technicolor cocktails. A few held steaming mugs. Bob Marley played over the speakers, continuing the reign of yesteryear's mellow rock. It was always Marley, or the Stones, or U2, or, God help me, Van Morrison at these things. Echoes of simpler times before the reanimation revolution, when matters of the heart were less life and death and it was okay to die lonely. The music of a dead generation seemed like a stamp of approval for singles mixers and community matchmaking socials of all kinds these days, as if a secret love spell hid woven in their chords and melodies. I'd been to more than a few such events before I met Lana. Rejuvenated by the pub atmosphere, Gustav led us to the dating hostess, a knockout blonde in a snug blue dress with reckless décolletage. She smiled, and Gustav finger-combed his hair and stood a little straighter, as if he had a chance with a woman like that. Welcome, gentlemen. I'm Barbara Ballard. Dating with us tonight? Yes, Gustav Marino and Phil Kowalczyk. We signed up last week, Gustav said. Barbara leaned over to find our names on her list. Her low-cut dress draped away from her body, and Gustav locked eyes on everything her loose clothing revealed. I kicked Gustav in the shin, but he didn't get the message. Barbara caught his clumsy gaze as she checked off our names. She raised an eyebrow. I don't have to remind you to behave yourselves tonight, do I? This isn't about getting lucky. It's about finding true love. Gustav has been off the dating scene for a while. He's a little rusty, I said. I remember what it's like between relationships. No one likes to go on love too long. Accidents can happen any time. She peeled a pre-printed name tag and handed it to me to stick on my shirt. She peeled one for Gustav and slapped it askew on his chest, pushing him back 2 steps in the process, then turning her hand to make sure he saw her sparkling engagement and wedding rings. You'll get nowhere treating women like that, Gus. It's Gustav, he said. Barbara handed us our dating cards and said, have fun, gentlemen. Gustav and I homed in on the last free spaces at the bar to await the dating rounds. Chairs and tables set with timers, scorecards, and pencils stood ready for us, closed off on one side of the pub. A crowd of people filled the other side. The 2 sections separated by the bar. Several living dead couples, men and women, women and women, men and men, even a trio or 2 intermingled, with an equal variety of living couples in the open dining area. With one's return from the dead riding on the outcome, the dating and mating game qualified as spectator sport, especially among those who'd already taken the plunge. Their weirdly sweet interest gave me an uneasy twinge, compounded by all the people in the crowd who'd died young, corpses with no signs of trauma, disease, or other obvious causes of death, who looked like they'd been in their 20s or 30s when they kicked the bucket. Some people chose death over marriage, with one partner killing themselves and, by reanimating, proving both partners' love and commitment. Suicide weddings. Lana and I had discussed it, but we hope to have children one day. The presence of so many living dead explained the protesters outside. Mercer's was a living dead hotspot. A waiter passed bearing a tray laden with plates of bar food, burgers, buffalo chicken wings, French fries, as well as dishes piled high with meat so raw trickles of blood ran through its folds. That gave me a quick shiver. Out for dinner on our anniversary last year, Lana and I sat beside a living dead couple locked in an all-out nuclear Armageddon of a lover's quarrel. The man broke up with his dead girlfriend then and there. The second he renounced his love for her, Lana, I, and everyone else in the dining room tensed like cows outside a steakhouse. The dead woman overturned the table, lunged at her boyfriend, missed, and then whirled and came at me, mouth wide, teeth bared, snarling, lips frothing with putrid spittle and remnants of Merlot. All her self-control and sense of identity eradicated by heartbreak. No love left to keep her sane. Her natural craving for live flesh seized her. The maitre d', who'd been watching the fight escalate, shot her in the head before she reached me. The restaurant comped our meal and slapped her ex with the standard breakup and disposal charge, then sent the jerk home. The dead never recover from rejection, the dark side of true love in action. The bartender slid us a couple of beers Gustav had ordered. I raised my mug, said cheers, and waited for Gustav to clink glasses. He rolled his eyes as he did it, and then we drank. Gustav? That is you! What in the hell are you doing here? A redhead with a modest lyrical brogue about our age and on the short side approached us. Her hair hung in waves of curls around her fair-skinned face. A pair of thick eyeglasses that should have looked geeky only emphasized her crystal blue eyes. She wore a white blouse, a hip-hugging gray skirt, and high heels. Gustav lowered his mug, half choking as he swallowed wrong. Caitlin! Wow, yes, hi. Funny to run into you here. Funny, yes, especially since you emailed me you had to leave early tonight for a doctor's appointment. I can't believe you lied to me. She punched his arm, not gently. Well, my appointment was canceled, and then my friend Phil, have you met Phil? Phil got nervous about this whole speed dating thing and asked me to tag along, and you're such a terrible liar. This is Phil, the same Phil of Lana and Phil, about whom you complain endlessly when you should be compiling dysentery statistics. Did you break it off with Lana, Phil? Nope, I said. See, now why would Phil be here unless it's the other way around, who got nervous? I looked at Gustav. You complain about us? No, Caitlin cut him off before he could defend himself. About how lucky you are, about how happy you are, about how lonely it is being a third wheel around you and Lana. how you don't understand and won't be sorry if he dies alone, unloved, and yada, yada, yada. Caitlin tapped her index and middle fingers and her thumb together, the universal sign for jibber-jabber. What gives? I asked Gustav. Gustav downed a slug of his beer. She's exaggerating. I hope so, man. I never complain about you to my crew in the studio. The only thing he goes on about more is how he's at death's door from some disease or another, a different one every week. I never had anyone on my staff take so many long lunches for doctor's appointments, said Caitlin. I'm so sorry, Caitlin. It just seemed easier to say it was another doctor's appointment than to explain all this. Gustav gestured to the speed dating tables. It won't happen again. But why are you here? Same reason you are. Maybe we'll be matched. She grinned with a twinkle in her eye and squeezed his arm, and all the late nights and extra attention Gustav bitched about suddenly made sense to me. Gustav remained too pig-headed to see it, though, and the prospect of dating his boss, even for 5 minutes, left him opening and closing his mouth as he gasped for a response. The music faded out on the PA system then for Barbara Ballard to speak, saving him from having to produce one, and mercifully sparing me the Aerosmith ballad starting. Ballard called for everyone's attention, her vivaciousness capturing excitement in the crowd. Every face in the room turned her way.
Wow. That's like the ultimate in speed dating, right? I am really intrigued by so many of your stories that I've read or heard you read, because they're all so perfectly in the moment. You know, so many things are current time and they sound like people could really be doing this, even though we're at this really creepy dating service kind of thing. And there's some, random people walking around and busting into the restaurant. So that's a really cool. How did you develop that kind of ability to make things sound so real?
That's a really hard question to answer. It just comes from observation, I think, paying attention to what's going on and paying attention to the little things that, happen when people interact, and practice just, writing and trying to always get to the heart of those, and then figuring out which ones really help the story move forward and which ones don't.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah,
and research too. I mean, for this one, at the time I wrote it, I asked my wife it would be okay if I went out speed dating to do research for this. And
I was going to ask about what kind of research you did. Yeah, and what was the answer?
She said no, and I didn't go. So I was open at the time, but
otherwise she could have been the one coming through, with putrid spittle and remnants of Merlot on her. Wow, what a phrase! No, she's a lovely woman. That would never happen to her. No,
exactly.
That's cool. So, so many of your things are short stories, and you have some long pieces, and then you have the graphic novels as well. What kind of genres do you prefer? Do you write short stories because you like them, or just because you have more time to train? How does it work for you?
Well, I love short stories. That's the main reason I write them. I love reading short stories. I probably read more short stories and anthologies and collections than I do novels. It's just, especially when it comes to horror fiction, it feels to me that the short form works best for horror fiction. And so, it's something I've always wanted to do. It's something from when I first started writing I wanted to be good at. And so I just keep doing it because I feel like every time I write a short story, I learn something new about writing short stories. So it's a lot of fun for me to do that.
That's cool. That's cool. Well, all right. I also want to know what is your favorite Halloween treat?
Oh, that's a good question. I'm partial to anything with peanut butter. So Reese's peanut butter cups, or the the little Take 5 bars.
Oh, cool. Well, listen, one thing I'm going to ask you to do, and our previous readers as well, you guys, if you want to put a link to your books, feel free to put those in the comments. That would be nifty. And if not, we'll be putting those on the event later and showing those as well.
Okay. I see a question from Amy. Can I pop that up?
Oh, yes, please, because I was looking at those earlier, but I got too busy talking to you.
There you go. So the short answer is yes. I have written many novellas. That's my second favorite form after the short story. My collection, The End of the Sacrifice, is a collection of 4 novellas. 3 Chords of Chaos is a novella, dark urban fantasy, and I'm currently writing the 4th and supposedly final novella in my Corpse Fauna series of zombie. It's sort of pulp zombie with a twist, supernatural twist from East Bay Books.
Does the final novella imply that everything falls apart and there's no? Don't tell us the answer.
No, I won't give anything away. Yes.
Yeah, that's cool. Okay. And what's the longest short story and shortest novella that you've written?
Oh, that's really
That's
hard.
question, yeah.
The longest short story, probably somewhere around 12,000 words.
Mm-hmm.
The shortest novella probably comes in somewhere in the 20,000 word count.
Yeah. But in between those two things, there's a difference, isn't there? You know.
Yeah, people debate over what counts as a novella, what counts as a novelette, what counts as a short story, what counts as a long short story, flash fiction, and all of that. So,
Yeah.
you know, I think the most important thing, especially as a writer, is that you just find the right length for the story
Mm-hmm.
you're telling.
Yeah. And if you have a specific length in mind that you're trying to meet, you have to focus a story accordingly, right?
Yes.
Yeah, that's very cool. This is awesome. I'm so glad you were able to read to us. In addition, what the other thing we didn't mention to everybody, you're also behind the scenes pulling all the bells and whistles. You're like the guy behind the curtain with all this. So in the middle of doing your reading, you're also moving all the nifty bells and buttons around. So thank you for your technology and your wizardry for that. It's
Oh,
well
my God. Yeah, I mean, it looks all fancy and technical on the broadcast side, but really I'm back here with like levers and pulleys and
There's a crank. We've got a steam powered thing in the other room. It's just amazing. Yeah.
I'm actually riding a bicycle as we speak to generate power for the whole thing. So,
And that's why you look so fit in the middle of a pandemic. Yeah. Excellent. Well, how about if we introduce Linda Addison now?
that's great.
Thank you, Jim. Linda Addison grew up in Philadelphia and began weaving stories at an early age. She currently lives in Arizona and has published over 350 poems, stories, and articles. Ms. Addison is the first African-American recipient of the world-renowned H.W.A. Bram Stoker Award and has received 5 awards for collections. The Place of Broken Things, written with Alessandro Manzetti from Crystal Lake Publishing in 2019. 4 Elements, written with Charlie Jacob, Marge Simon, and Rain Graves, Bad Moon Books, 2013. How to Recognize a Demon Has Become Your Friend, which is short stories and poetry from Nikon eBooks, 2011. Being Full of Light, Insubstantial in 2007. Consumed, Reduced to Beautiful Gray Ashes, 2001. In addition, 2 of her other works were finalists for the Stoker Award. Dark Duet from Nikon eBooks 2012, a collaborative book of poetry written with Stephen M. Wilson. She co-edited Sycorax's Daughters, an anthology of horror fiction and poetry by African-American women. Publisher was Cedar Grove Publishing, 2017, and she co-edited that with Kanatra Books and Susanna Morris. It was a Stoker finalist in the anthology category. In 2018, she received the HWA Lifetime Achievement Award. I'm delighted to present Linda D. Addison.
Hey, oh my God, I can't believe you read the whole resume. Anyway, I'm going to read some poetry and some Halloween kind of poetry, which is probably a lot of what I write anyway. Okay, so I'm going to read some poems from The Place of Broken Things, written with Alessandro. The first one is called When You Forget Me. And it's inspired by a poem by Pablo Neruda, which is one of my favorite poets. And his is called If You Forget Me. You think you know all things, but this is how it is. When I look at the blood moon, at the red streaks of the slow cuts at my wrists, when I touch the candle's flame, the building's soot, or the bloated blisters of my hands, nothing carries you to me as if nothing exists. Odors, flowers, letters become little memories that sail away from the world I no longer want. Well, yesterday, when little by little you stopped loving me, I shall love you more and more. When suddenly you forgot me, did not look for me, I began to stop feeling all things. If you think me broken and mad, the thoughts of pain that became my life, and you decide to let me drown off the shore of my shattered heart without roots, remember back on this last day, on this last hour. I shall lift my bleeding wrist and my mind will sail away to seek sweet death. But if after the last day, the last hour, you remember you and I without bitter deception, if each night a shadow climbs on your bed to your lips, ah, my love, my torture, in the flames of hell rebuffed, in the nothingness I reside, my love will feed on you, beloved. And as long as you live, I will be in your dreams, never leaving you. So that was When You Forget Me. The next poem is also from The Place of Broken Things. It's called Philly's Little Boy, and it was a kind of a call and response poem for me in that Alessandro had written Collada's Little Girl. So this was inspired by his poem and the theme of his. And I grew up in Philly. Chestnut Street at midday. Tommy is counting the yellow cabs go back and forth, full of tourists with their faces framed in windows. He's waiting in front of the manicured park for someone to tell his story. It's only $1. 52, 53. He's only 8. A thick leather collar around his golden brown neck, a frayed rope hanging from a loop at his throat. A strange rosary for a thin boy. He's still waiting, with eyes unblinking, so ancient, a brand unhealed on his shoulder. 75, 76. A dark brown girl with a toothy smile and flowered yellow dress stops near him. She seems to see him. Maybe she notices me, thinks Tommy. Or did she catch his shadow? But the girl raises her hand and waves to a man near him who rushes to lift her in his arms and run across the busy street without a glance at him. 85, 86. It's only $1, ma'am, whispers the little boy, stretching his hand towards a tall, pale woman wearing a long blue striped dress, a style at least a century older, her blonde hair piled high on her head, walking past his piece of sidewalk. This wicked place. But she doesn't answer him, opens a lace parasol like it would deliver savory hope, and continues on her way, skipping like a little girl. Maybe she's a ghost too, thinks Tommy. 1, 2. So that was Philly's Little Boy. The next one is from The Place of Broken Things. It's called Failed Love Lessons. This is not my breath. It is yours. The false start, misaligned emotions sliding past the cut in your chest. That is not my opening, revealing all secrets. It is yours. It used to be our hearts beating together. This is not my hand. It is yours that caressed my face, breath quickening as the cut at your wrist released it. Lies written in sleepy moments seeping out. Chrism script, patterns of misused affection. These are not my eyes. They are yours. Can you finally see me, the real me, now that I have freed them from your confusing need to control? I suspect the tears of blood on your cheeks contain some truth. It is not my skin. It is yours, peeled away to allow the history of pain to write itself in the veins. Underneath a map from the past to unseen future. There now. Admitting wrong is no sin. Hiding it is. These are not my muffled cries. They are yours. Denying, pleading for redemption, I cannot give. Only seek out the truth of your abuse, interpreted through the echoes of devotional song here, in distant woods where you first seduced me. This is my recovery, my need to understand how false love came to be, so I will know better next time, so I can learn. So, failed love lessons. And the last poem is from How to Recognize a Demon Has Become Your Friend, which I like to think is instructional and entertaining. It's a poem, a story, a poem, a story. This poem was inspired from a story that I actually had published in, the story was called Whispers During Still Moments, and it was published in Dark Thirst Anthology. The poem is called How Her Garden Grows. Adina hums as she digs in the earth, moonlight spilling over her hands. Like her name in African, she has saved. Someone waits under the dirt. She was a first, ancient and beautiful. He was remade by her desire to play for a while before returning to dust. The endless earth is her oldest companion, all humans, sweet food. But on occasion, before their final breath, she trickled her blood into one, planted them deep. She smiles as the earth gives way to her latest crop. Ashes to ashes, dust to dust, she does her part to recycle. How her garden grows. And there you have it. 4 poems for Halloween.
Thank you so much, Linda. That was beautiful.
Thank you.
You're wonderful.
In that strange way that beauty is for our peoples.
I was just thinking that the first time I heard you read your work was, I think, at a Horror Find weekend, back when that convention was still happening.
Yeah. I think you're right.
That was a while. I've heard you a few times since read that, and I always enjoy it. So thank you for coming tonight and sharing your work with us.
Oh, my pleasure. Be back with my New York folk, even though I'm in Arizona.
Yeah.
You guys, I don't miss the winter and I don't miss the cost of living, but I miss my people.
Come visit in summer.
Sounds like a deal.
Yeah. So what I was wondering why you selected those particular poems. Did you have something in mind, some theme, or just sort of these are the ones you felt connected to read tonight?
Well, I wanted something. I mean, not all the poems in The Place of Broken Thing are necessarily straight up horror. There's a lot of weirdness to them and surrealism. So I wanted to pick poems that I felt were more appropriate for this close to Halloween. And I sort of did them in an order because When You Forget Me and Failed Love Lessons are both about relationships. So I put Philly Boy in the middle. I'd kind of like to try to mix things up like that. So
cool. Well, there was a nice progression to them.
Thank you.
So another thing I was wondering about, now you were interviewed recently in an article, I think it appeared on CNN.com.
I know. What? That's what I said. When the gentleman contacted me, I was like, what?
It was a fantastic article. And I think a couple of our other New York members were interviewed for that too, Mark Abbott and Stephen Van Patten, along with who else? Tanana Reeve-Dew and Stephen Barnes. And, so it was a really terrific article. One of the things that you mentioned in that was you talked a bit about writing against expectations. Could you tell us a little bit about what that experience was like and what you were saying in the article?
Well, I mean, I grew up in the time when I was 16, 17, 18 was Angela Davis time. You know, it was the big move for Black Power. And when I was writing, I was always writing this weird genre stuff. And, you know, so people were like, why aren't you writing political stuff in that straight up political way? Because I think there's still, if you look at my work, messages to be said. But I couldn't do it really. I mean, it was forcing something that wasn't true to me. My imagination from 5 years old was always about weird, strange things that were somewhat surreal. So I, for some reason, just ignored it and kept writing weird stuff. Even though at that time in particular, there were no Black people really representing, you know, there was like just a couple, Octavia Butler and stuff like that, but no one in horror at all. But didn't matter. I guess I was just the same as I am now, weird and stubborn.
and now we have articles like this celebrating all of the genre fiction coming from Black voices, which is just amazing.
Yeah, I think Lovecraft Country has just introduced one thing, which is connected to the work that Jordan Peele's been supporting with his company that he's done with his movies. Mm-hmm. So yeah, it's great to see. It's wonderful to see. I actually have a film out this year inspired by one of my poems. It's a horror film, so done by Jamal Hodge.
What's the name of the film?
The film is called Morning Meal, which is this like Morning Loss, which is the same name as the poem. So it's won a couple awards already for him. So I'm really excited.
Is that online for viewing, or is it still sort
Not
of?
Yet.
Not yet. Okay.
Yet, but fingers crossed. Right now, it's winning awards in the film festival area. So
that's fantastic.
Yeah, I'm excited. It's wonderful. He did an incredible job.
And we have a couple of questions coming in the comments. So let me see if we can bring these up. Here's one from Carol.
Hey, buddy. What's up?
So which way does it work? Does your life affect your poetry, or does poetry affect your life?
Never been asked that question. I'm not sure how it splits, except that poetry comes through me. So it's about my living and my reaction to living. So I guess if I had to pick one, I would say my life affects my poetry. But I basically hear things all the time in my head like poetry. So it's real skitsy.
Well, that leads us into another question that popped up here from Teal. Is it the image or emotion that dictates the poem's form?
Ooh. I'm not sure how much I can separate image or emotion, because I've always described myself as an organic writer. So I write almost hearing it as it comes, the poems. I don't really design them necessarily. So I've learned by studying different forms and so forth. It just sort of works its way into a form. I know that doesn't explain it. I don't know what to tell you, man.
No, hey, not everybody's process can be, mapped out or broken down. It's very organic, I think.
It's very organic.
We have a question from Brian Matthews.
Brian, dude. Does the current environment make it easier or harder to write your poetry? Well, it's a two-sided sword, right? It's a coin flipping light and dark in the air. So it's hard sometimes to sit down, and I think a lot of us creative people can see this, to sit down and create when the environment is so filled with so much fear and anger and so forth. But at the same time, I find when I can work my way through that, the work does come, because everything is just on edge, and we write edgy stuff. So, it's kind of a two-edged sword.
Interesting. And then another question, Laura Hickman is asking about your whole university class.
Oh,
So,
the eighth class online. Yeah, they just announced it today. So I'm not sure of the exact date I'll be teaching, but I would say it's going to be a first come first sign up kind of deal. Jim, you should know. You know the answer to this. This is your thing.
I'm checking my calendar. I think you are teaching the 19th or the 26th. I'll double check that and I'll post it in the
I'm
comments.
not sure either.
Yeah, but you can sign up there. I don't think there's a real limit on the class. So, I hope you're prepared. You might have like 200 students, but
I'm not sure that's an efficient thing, but okay. Then it becomes a lecture more than the interactive class I normally do. But all right, we'll see how it goes.
There we go. Megan for the win, October 26th.
Oh, thank you, Megan.
She's on top of things. I'm just scattered.
Love her.
That's great.
I was feeling it was then.
All right.
Yeah, so they just announced it, so yeah, people can start signing up.
Yeah, it's open for registration. It's something that's been in the works for a while, and it took a little longer to get all the pieces in place than we hoped. We had hoped to announce it sooner, but we still wanted to get it launched, now this time of year. So hopefully we'll see a lot of interest in the classes.
I think it's a wonderful idea. I'm so happy to see it happening. I imagine there'll be classes I'm going to want to take. I've taken classes on my own with Jonathan, so not me personally. I mean, things that he's offered. So right. I'm looking forward to see as people come up.
Yeah, it's a great lineup. I mean, we were thrilled that you all agreed to be our guinea pigs. And I think it's going to be a lot of fun. So yeah. I have one more question for you. So I know you're a big Star Wars fan.
Insane. How I don't have a Star Wars tattoo is because I can't decide what to put on me.
Well, there's a lot of good options there.
I know.
So, you know what? I was going to ask you, if you had a Star Wars tattoo, what would it be? No. What I'm going to ask you is probably more difficult to answer. Now that they've finished the latest trilogy, where do you think Star Wars should go?
Wow. I'm I got to tell you, I'm really enjoying the Mandalorian.
Yes.
Which is kind of a different place than we normally think of. I'm really like very energized by that, and the baby kind of Yoda type creature and the interaction between them and the whole thing they've built up with the concept of it. So I don't know.
They've kind of gotten back to the roots with Star Wars with that show.
Yeah, and I like that a lot. I mean, I own all the movies. I watch them 2-3 times a year in order, story order, not release order. But yeah, I really like what they're doing with the Mandalorian.
Great. All right. One more question from the comments. From Amy Greck. Oh. Linda, what scares you?
Ooh, girl. Human beings is scaring me all the time. People are making questionable decisions. Ever since I can remember being like a kid and looking at grown-ups and being, why are you doing that? Why are you hurting other people? Why? Because I couldn't relate it to something I would want to do. Honestly, it's people.
All right.
It's people making hurtful decisions that I think are the biggest thing.
People it is. Yeah, I could definitely see that. All right. So I think we're going to bring on the rest of our readers. So we're gonna go Brady Bunch now, as they say the streaming biz. Here
The
comes
new
April.
family- The new family Brady Bunch.
Rob, and Carol. All right, welcome, guys.
What a fantastic night of readings. Thank you, everybody, for sharing such great stories and sharing them so well. You know, this is just so cool. Do you guys like reading your stories and your work?
Yes.
For sure. Yeah. I love it.
Yeah, I think everyone here reads so beautifully. I didn't always. I mean, I used to read like really fast and run away because I thought I'd throw up. And then I decided one day I didn't want to do that anymore because my work deserved it. And I took a one-day class with Dallas.
Oh, yeah.
To draw Ketchup.
Mhm.
Changed everything for me. So I enjoyed it very much.
If you ever got a chance to see, or never got a chance to see him read, he was amazing. He just did beautiful readings. Yeah.
Mhm.
And an excellent teacher. And he had a background like April's, you know, that was in drama and performance. So,
And I should probably clarify we're talking about Jack Ketchum.
oh yeah, Jack Ketchum, Dallas Meyer.
So,
Yeah.
So what do you all have coming up? What's new? What's next up for you? Any more events this October or books coming up?
Hell's Mall.
Hell's
Yeah.
Mall. Oh, so we promised a cover reveal. And
Yes,
we're going to pop
thank
that up. This is the cover of April's forthcoming Hell's Mall anthology.
Woo!
This is the
Yeah.
7th of a series. And with COVID, nothing gets scarier, but we don't have any COVID stories, but it's scary.
Look at that tote bag. That is amazing. I'm trying to picture the store where one gets this bag.
Boy,
Cool.
I don't know, but I want to shop there.
Wow. That's
include
gorgeous.
all different malls, the Agora, the Bazaar. They're all different store stories.
Woo-hoo.
So when is that coming out, April?
Oh, well, Ellen Datlow told me I should wait until next year. So I'm not sure. I could do the ebook this year and the paperback next year. I don't know.
So probably early 2021 people can find it.
Yeah, late this year, early next year.
Great. Okay.
Mhm. Cool.
All right, Robert, what's up, Robert?
Well, Robert just had a book out, so
Yeah. My new collection is out. Yeah. So yeah, I have my new collection out. I have it here.
Ooh.
Yes. Her Infernal Name and Other Nightmares.
ta-da.
There it is. Beautiful.
Love it.
It's available wherever "quote unquote" fine books are sold. And I have a bunch of readings that I'm doing coming up for a few different libraries here on Long Island. And October 13th, I'm doing one at the Brentwood Public Library. These are all online. The 14th, I'm hosting a class in writing horror for the Riverhead Library on the 14th. October 29th, the Jericho Library. And that same day in the evening, the Sayville Library. So I'm doing a bunch of readings. Have some appearances on some podcasts coming up. I'm going to be on Curtis Lawson's Weird Transmissions, and I'm going to be on the Lovecraft E-Zine podcast as well. So super excited to be there. No, Alp, yeah, you can get it at where unreputable books are sold as well. Like if there's like a back alley where a guy's got like an open trunk, you can. That probably is me. To be
And
fair,
body parts as well. You know.
yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
That's great.
I'm also very happy to be closing out this anthology, Hookman and Friends.
Oh, cool.
My story, Hookman's End, is at the end of this one, and that was a lot of fun, sort of playing with the old the trope of the Hookman urban legend.
Nice. And I think we have over on hwany.org on our updates and calendars, we have all of Rob's events listed, all those library events. So if you're interested in checking those out. And do you have those posted somewhere too, Rob?
Yeah, you can find them on spookyhousepress.com at the on the blog there, and has links to all the registrations as well.
Great. Cool. Linda, how about you? Anything on the horizon?
Just a couple. So I'm actually on another thing tomorrow.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I know. It's DCT's TV present What Comes Next, and it's me, filmmakers talking about what the arts landscape looks like for filmmakers of color after 2020. Like, what's kinds of opportunities or not opportunities could come out of all the things that we've seen coming this year. Black Lives Matter and COVID and all the other things that have been happening. So don't even look at me like I got an answer right now. But anyway, I'll be talking with some other great, awesome people. And the moderator is actually Jamal Hodge.
Oh, cool.
The maker of the morning meal film of mine that was inspired by my poem.
Oh, yeah. Oh,
So
it's a great film. He's a fascinating guy. I love the discussion after the viewing of it, It's amazing how you took your words and made the visual out of them.
I mean, it's just amazing and beautiful. I mean, so I feel so blessed to have had my first film concept. So happy. Not my last, because I got plans. Anyway, so this year I was also in Miss Creations.
Oh, yeah.
Anthology. I have a poem in there. And I have a short story in Don't Turn Out the Lights.
Fantastic.
That's on my table. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's a lot of fun. And stuff coming up, basically I always shout out about it, but it'll be on my site too. But I have a poem in an art installation that's going to be online. It's called the installation is called Red Spring, Curating the End of the World. And if you ever want to read something, Why I'm Scared of People, read about Red Spring. Because apparently, okay, Carol, you know what I'm saying? Get my thing. If you look in history, there's a point in this country, not so long ago, sadly, where whites just decided they need to kill a bunch of black people in towns and just did it. It's called Red Spring. Yep. And and I have some poems coming out in Starline. Starline has a special issue, 43.4. So I have a couple there, and like that.
Wow. So we do have a question though, Linda. Can you share the information for your event tomorrow?
Sure.
Have that, or
yeah, I'll put it up here, but you know me, I'm not shy about it. It'll be all over Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, but I can certainly put it up here because you do need to sign up for it. Should I put it into
yeah, if you put it in that that chat window, I can put it into the comments.
Okay.
That'd be great.
All right.
Yeah, this is an interesting platform in that we can display things, but we have to get them into a certain spot before we can do that. So that's cool. Yeah.
Okay. So here's the information.
Yeah, if you go to this link, you can sign up, register. Like I said, it's free. See if we can figure this out. 2021 coming.
And just because this is such a fabulous cover, I'm going to put your cover up for the Place of Broken Things.
That's Alessandro, man. He has some great depth of art. He picked the art for that.
I just love that. It's just stunning. Yeah.
And I think, Carol, you have a new book coming up, don't you?
Yes, I have a short story in an anthology called The Devil's Due, which is releasing when else on Halloween. It's a very Faustian kind of thing. It's from Valhalla Books, who is a new publisher, Adam Messer. Nothing is ever as it seems. So the idea is these are all stories about a deal gone wrong, or a deal you shouldn't have made, or what do you have to pay back after you've made a deal. So that's coming on Halloween.
With a wonderfully creepy cover.
Yeah.
It's amazing, Carol.
Thank you. It's cool.
So I want to thank everyone for joining us tonight. This was a blast. Your readings were wonderful.
Thank you.
Just a reminder for our audience, we have a Galactic Terrors newsletter, which we're going to be sending out in the future to announce upcoming sessions and reading programs. So please feel free to sign up for that. Next month, we'll be back on November 12th for readings by Randy Dawn, Lou Rera, Chris Mars, and Craig DeLuey. So it's going to be a really exciting evening in November.
Nice.
And please click and subscribe below to follow future Galactic Terror transmissions. Subscribe to our channel. Just hit like on the video if you don't want to subscribe. All of that stuff somehow magically helps us attract more people to our, like a Venus flytrap. We just draw them in. And we appreciate your help with that. So does anyone have any last words they want to share before we wrap up for tonight?
I just want to say it's just a pleasure to be here. I'm so happy you all are doing this series. Thank you so much.
It was a pleasure.
That's
Thank
great.
you so much for having me and having all of us.
Oh,
Yeah.
thank you everybody for joining us. And it's a terrible shame that we can't see each other in the local area in person, but the one wonderful thing is that we get to talk to somebody all the way from Tucson, Arizona. So thank you for coming in from near and far, everybody.
And I know we had people in the audience from all around the country, so this is so great that we can connect over the distance in this crazy time.
Yes.
Yeah.
Isn't it crazy?
So
Thank you. And remember, we're always on the second Thursday. So we're delighted to have folks come and listen again.
it's all right. All right. Thank you, everyone. Have a great night.
Thanks, everybody.